Welcome back to the AI Academy for Business Owners. We are in our black belt class. This is the last formal teaching class of the program. We have one more week at the end. We will do some wrap up and sort of planning for the future. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But today is our final teaching session for the black belt. Just to recap our belt awards, Kathy is finally on the board. She may have to redo a few things because of sound issues, but she was the mover and shaker this session. So well done, Kathy. Attempting to get up to green belt, maybe not successful, but that's no problem. You can resubmit those. And just encouragement to everybody else to keep your submissions going. Remember, you've got 3 months on the platform to get the certification submitted and get your actual certificate. After 3 months, we'll need to negotiate because I do have to pay for your access to the platform. So that's all good. Let's just do a quick recap of brown belt, last week's session. Last week, we were looking at using AI to write its own agency style prompts. And I warned you that this could take a little bit for your head to grasp what was happening. So now you've had a week to think about it and maybe to play with it. What are your reflections or learnings that you think you got out of last week's session?
I actually played a little bit with it from our a session when we made the Chat GPT of the
Yes.
problem solver thing.
Yep.
And I actually had knee surgery, so I built it around that to help me with the development plan based on all the issues and professional advice, and gave me a work plan. And then I used a little. I had to redo the Brown to understand it, but I did some forecasting for future planning models on different opportunities they have, and what are the scenarios that I can come into.
Mhm.
And then I had it built by daily plan. So I just have to say the day it is today, and it'll give me what I need to do. I can tell it I don't have access to this, or I'm here in the bed, and it'll give me exercises for that,
Great.
food option scenarios. So I got to play with a little bit with it, and I figured maybe I can try, but the brown belt was complex, and I was trying to rebuild the whole thing, but I got an idea of like the different scenarios you can build
Yeah.
for your modeling in the future.
Excellent. Yeah. So the whole point of brown belt is to be able to start to think wider about what it can do for you and allow it to give a crack at some things that you might not know how to write the script for, but if you give it enough information and a good example, it'll have a go at writing the whole script for you. So that really is the learning, and so you're exploring that. So I like that. One of the things that I realized, I don't think I communicated this to you last week very well. If you've been freestyling a prompt, let's say you've been working on a deliverable, and so, like we do as we go through each of our prompt sessions where we're copying and pasting bits of prompts. Hopefully by now you're learning to write much more detailed prompts using the skills that we've taught you. And so what tends to happen is let's say you're working on a deliverable, and so you're playing with ChatGPT. You're trying to work out what the prompts need to be to give you the information that you want. Now, if you want to get to a point where you want to put this whole thing into a GPT as one long script, well, as you're working through that, you iterate with GPT, you give it more information, you ask it to correct things. When you finish that process, this is brown belt thinking. Ask it to create a long prompt to guide you through this entire process you can use next time. Okay, it's a
Oh,
one
yeah.
sentence prompt.
Put all the pieces together.
Yeah, and it does
Nice.
a really good job. It actually
Um,
seems to work out where you corrected it. And it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have to review it. Okay. But, to be able to just say to it, hey, we just did a process. Maybe you spent 45 minutes playing with this idea. And I think I got to something quite useful. Well, lock that down for me and give me a revised final prompt that will get me to the same place. And it will do it. Now, again, you've got to always go through it, read it, maybe go through and look at what you corrected, make sure those things are reflected in the prompts. But you guys now have the skills to be able to critique that prompt, see what it's doing, work out if it captured your corrections, and probably then make some corrections yourself. Of course, the other thing you can do to it is, you can copy that into a new session and paste it and try it, but you can actually stay in that original session and tell it where it's made a mistake and ask it to correct it, and it will revise the whole prompt again. Because now its prompt is the output. Okay, so really powerful. This is why I said this brown belt thinking is really pushing the boundaries of your mind, not about how do I do something, but what could I do? And let ChatGPT actually help you create that long form script to achieve it. Okay, so two main examples there. One was using the example from another process and just say, go and do likewise. And the second example was, I've worked on something. I think I've got to a good result. Now give me a prompt to redo this next time and see how it goes through that process. And you might have to update it. Okay. But again, those are some of the things that we want to think about as part of our sort of our approach to brown belt. Any other thoughts or reflections on that content?
I was thinking, can we, to add to that, as we're going through those iterations of prompts, tell it what the final outcome. I'm looking to be, like I want something to take me when I get done with this. I want this process to be no longer than 15 minutes or something.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. That's important that when you give it that final request to create a new prompt for you, give it all that additional context. You might even say, we've just walked through an entire iterative process of creating my blank 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 deliverable. Okay, I would like you to create a prompt that I can reuse next time or save as a custom GPT. I would like the whole process to take no more than 15 minutes and require no additional external input from the user other than answering questions. Okay, well, now it's going to do all of that for you. It's going to give it a crack anyway. It's going to give it a good try to create that prompt.
Nice.
Okay, and you could even then just paste in, the prompt from that agency AI that we were working with, and say use this as an example. So again, we're giving it the framework of how to build a prompt. But ChatGPT knows how to build prompts. It knows how to talk to itself. So, it does pretty good. May not be how you would have done it, but it does a pretty good job of writing a prompt that it can reuse later.
Nice.
So these are prompts that are being used by AI companies, for example, like Fathom, right? Or those AI bots that you can run your business with. They're
Yes.
selected by ones that are programmed with prompts to pull the information that that company wants and then sells the product.
Yeah.
Similar. So that's basically okay. That's
Yeah.
basically what
So
we've just learned here.
most AI tools that are available in the market right now are
Yeah.
simply doing what I've just taught you to do. But
Right.
they're just doing it through the API. They're not doing it through the ChatGPT interface. That's all they're doing. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today again. Okay. Well, let's move on. Today's content, we're at the ninja level. We're ready for our black belt. We're going to become master ninja AI users. And today we're talking about automation. Now, I said at the beginning of this course that there were about I actually think there are 5 money moments in this program, and today is one of them. This is where we can take it up a level. We're going to take a slightly different approach today. We're actually going to start by asking AI to teach us something. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to have you do all of that in the class. You can have the prompts, you can run the prompts, but please go back and read it afterwards. I do want to give sort of a little bit of a presentation that should summarize most of what you're going to get from AI, but I want to just make sure that I've communicated the material to you. Now, one of the things that we've tried to do in this whole program is let you change your mindset from what book do I have to read or what training course do I have to go and do, and start thinking, AI, please tell me about. Okay. And so we've done several examples already where we've asked AI to teach us something. Well, that's the mode we're going to use today. Okay. So again, it's going to create a lot of content for us today. We're not going to read all this content in class. I expect you to go and do that afterwards. But again, part of this is to teach you that skill of getting AI to teach you rather than trolling the internet, reading lots of articles, hoping you're finding the right material. The quality of stuff that ChatGPT is picking up is it's improving almost daily. And we're getting better and better and better quality, and it's filtering out the shrapnel to a large extent. I wouldn't say it totally, but it's doing that. So we're going to walk through that as an example today. And again, this becomes a blueprint for you for how to think in the future when it comes to, I've got something I want to understand or learn. What do I do to start that process? Well, historically, we would have looked for a book. We would have looked for a YouTube video. We would have looked for a course. Well, now what we should be doing is starting with AI and asking it to teach us. And I just did something the other day. I was actually, I didn't even see it until after I'd finished it. What was I doing here? I think I was doing some research on automation for today. Was this the one? No. Where was it? Here, automation tools. Oh, I don't think I saved it. I don't think I saved it. Just check one last thing. It actually, no. It actually brought up for me a YouTube video.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. As part of its content delivered to me. I'm like, that's pretty damn good. It's like saves me the work of having to troll through, and you go do a YouTube search and you get every man and his dog who wants to talk about something, and they're not always the highest quality. And maybe you want a 10-minute video and you got to sit through a 45-minute lecture to find the piece that you actually want. So it's really helpful. So again, this is a framework that I want you to be thinking about as you're going forward in terms of what do I need to learn. Okay. So we're gonna follow the learn, apply, prove process here. As I said, we're not gonna do all this in class. You will probably do most of this as part of your homework. Okay, so we're going to start with just some introductory material. You having your role plan is not necessary today. You'll want the assets for today's session. Martin has posted those in the chat. They will be emailed out for those watching on video, or you should be able to download them from the site. And you may want a document to copy and paste into. I remind you of our standard mindsets. Work on your work. Think AI first. Hopefully this is now becoming like oxygen to you, and would love to see you posting your daily progress in the growth journal. Okay, so introduction for AI as your automation partner. So as I said, we're taking a slightly different approach today. I've taught you all the prompt lessons you need. We've changed direction now, not looking at prompt skills per se, but looking at what we can achieve with these large language models. I'm not going to talk about prompt learnings today in this session. I'm going to be talking about prompt strategy. And I want you to look at this prompt, and I'm not going to ask you what the lessons are. I want you to ask me, what is the strategy being deployed in this prompt? What is this prompt trying to achieve?
Well, I see you want it, you having to return the information to your specifications, how you are, or how you want to interpret it.
Yep.
I
So
love the idea of using a metaphor.
Yeah, well, we've seen this before. So we've seen as a prompt skill, we've seen user voice. This is sort of more of a directive approach. It does this really well. I love the way it does this. And you know, it can bake the whole conversation around a metaphor. The strategy we're looking at here, however, is two main elements. Number one is we want it to simplify a complex topic. The more words you ask it to use, obviously, the more detailed of an analysis you'll get. So asking for a 300 word overview, it's going to give you sort of a newsletter style article. Okay. 1,000 word overview is going to start to give you a little bit more detail, maybe getting a little technical. A 2,000 word overview is like giving you a chapter of a book. Okay, so depending on what level you want, but the key strategy here is AI does just a fantastic job of summarizing complex ideas. Okay, so give me a 1,000 word overview of your tool along with other software you use, and it'll give you that 1,000 word summary, you know, plus or minus. Usually it actually is on the lower side, I've noticed, instead of the higher side. And then the second part of the strategy here is it can tailor that strategy to any nuance you want. Okay, so you know, Chris, your role will be slightly different than mine. Mahin's role will be different than ours. So when she's pasting, Emily will be the same. Charles is the same. You know, you could have it tailor this, you know, any summary you do, so it becomes relevant to your particular role. Now, remember, you might, you know, it probably already knows who you are because it's memorized that. Okay, so in fact, we could just summarize this down to tailor it to me in my role, and it pretty much knows what your role is by now. Although you can always, you know, edit that. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to copy the script from the assets document, from the prompts document. Please remember to update the first 2 lines with your automation tool. And if you're not sure what an automation tool is, just put Zapier. And software you use daily. I think both of you are Microsoft houses. So you might want to talk about the Microsoft 365 suite. You can also list other SaaS products that you may be using in your business. But you know, just start with something that's in there. So I'm going to jump this over myself. I'm going to start a new chat. I'm going to paste this and I'm going to put Zapier and software we use daily. I'm a Google shop, so we're going to put Google Workspace products.
I'm a Google shop too.
We also use, we're starting to use Active Campaign, switching off Keep. I use Better Proposals. And I use youcanbook.me. Okay, tailor it to my role as the partner of your accountants. Okay, and we're looking for SaaS products here, online products, not desktop-based products, by the way. Okay, and we'll leave the last 2 sentences as they were. Okay, so for me, it's come up with an orchestra metaphor. It's going to bake this metaphor, the conductor's baton, the string section. It did this for me last time I ran it too, using the same analogy. The brass section. So it's going through each of the main pieces and giving me an explanation. There's a little bit of technical detail here. Zapier has things called zaps. And so it's just giving me some ideas as how I could automate aspects within Google Workspace. Now, actually, what I should have also said was Xero, okay, and QuickBooks. So that would have given me a little bit more detail here, okay, given that we're all on live, we're all accountants. That's certainly something you'd want to include as well. Okay, and so it's gone through it. It's taken all those examples that I gave it, and it's given me some suggestions on what Zapier might be able to do to automate elements of these products.
Brian
Okay.
came back with kitchen analogies.
Kitchen
Metaphors.
analogies. Interesting.
Yes, it says the kitchen of automation, your digital recipe book, cooking up efficiency, number one, ingredient prep, number two,
Yeah.
recipe creation.
Yeah. Well, the kitchen analogy is a really good one for this topic, actually. Yeah. So
I
it's interesting
think
that it gave you a different analogy than it gave me. I wonder what basis it uses
so.
to come up with that.
Yeah, so I think it did because I'm using my perplexity, and I have a
Okay.
culinary degree, so I've been messing
There we
around
go.
with recipe and
Wow.
shopping and like all this stuff. So I think it took like my basic information and
Yep.
Wow.
put it into that metaphor.
That's great.
It's so funny.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so I'll leave you to go back and read that in due course. We want to keep moving on because I've got some other
Yeah.
things I want to make sure I show you.
Yep.
Okay, so here's a bonus process. This is all about being able to create your own learning environments. Okay, so this prompt here is focusing on Zapier. We're saying that we want to create a learning academy on AI automation. We're using ChatGPT 4.0, and here are the software tools that we want to include in our academy. Okay, so it's going to take some of those lessons we've learned, matrix thinking, um, information on here. Give me the combination of how I could use the software. Tell me what to do next. And then this is where you'd use your role plan. You could paste your role plan deliverables into this prompt, and now it would give you an academy for your roles, your deliverables in your role plan. Okay, so I'm not going to do this live. I'd love for you guys to do this offline and copy and paste your 64 role deliverables into this prompt before you submit it. And if you want to, go on up, certainly update the tools that you're using in your practice, your firm, and let it come back to you with an education style approach to how to do this for your specific roles. Okay. Again, for extra credit here, you could then create a course. You could take one of those deliverables. Now, remember when we went back, when we started looking at the role plan, we started digging into individual items and we created SOPs and things like that. Well, this is a fantastic way of letting AI not only teach you, but guide you through implementing your role plan and looking specifically at this issue of automation. So these two steps here are sort of almost going back to the gray belt concepts of the role plan, but saying, okay, instead of creating an SOP, I think we did an SOP in white or yellow belt. Might have even done one in gray belt. I don't remember. But instead of creating an SOP, what we're asking it to take on sort of an education style approach, come up with some ideas for your deliverables, and then now create a course to teach you how to implement those things it just told you for your deliverable. Okay, so this is a fantastic way of you starting to flesh out your role plan into action. Okay, we've done the role plan, we've looked at how AI could help. Now we take it to the next level and say, how could we have automation and AI help us? Okay, so I'm not going to run through these in the class. I'll leave you guys to work on that yourselves. Right, so this is sort of the apply section, and this is where you can run through these with me a little bit if you want to. So what we're going to look at now is a couple of practical prompts. So I want you to look at this prompt. Tell me not merely what is it doing, but what are we trying to achieve with this prompting approach?
Efficiency.
Yep. That's always what we're trying to achieve with AI, but there's something a little more specific here that I don't think we've actually done in previous examples.
Or it's updating the lead when it says that it subscribes, it's like automating that.
Well, keep in mind, this is an example output. So it's not
Oh.
doing this, it's just using
Asking.
that as an example
Oh,
text.
okay.
Okay. Note this word here, 10 ideas. Okay. AI is really good at idea iteration. It's really good at coming up with sample headlines for articles. So, I often double the number that I actually want just because you know that half of them are going to be total crap.
Yeah.
But, especially when you're looking at headlines or possible article ideas, okay?
Yeah.
Always ask for more than you actually think, at least double what you actually need. If you need to write 3 articles, well, ask it to give you 10, 6 to 10
Yeah.
ideas, okay? Because you're going to throw out over half of them as not relevant, too generic, not my audience, but you might come down if you ask for 10 to 2 items, you go, yeah, that would work. That's good. Let me explore those 2. So idea iteration in AI is really good. And I tell you, one of the biggest challenges we have as humans is getting into that creative mode. It's actually really difficult for us. Some people can do it a lot easier, but for most of us, especially us analytical bean counter types, we find this really difficult because we want to get practical very quickly. And our brains are designed to get practical very quickly. Okay. Sometimes we've got to, there's whole classes on creativity and coming up with ideas. And one of the rules is you've got to suspend judgment. You can't challenge an idea on the first pass through because your goal is to get as many ideas on the table as possible. And AI is fantastic for this because it doesn't care whether the idea doesn't fit. I mean, you're going to give it some guidelines, so hopefully they're a little closer. But, and you won't insult it when you tell it that its ideas suck. And you say, these 5 ideas are terrible, get rid of them and give me 5 new ones. It doesn't get upset when you do that to it, unlike a staff member who does get upset if you tell them that their ideas are no good. So it's great. So again, this is just again one of these strategy type questions. Is idea iteration really good? So I want you to copy and paste this, and if you want to add any additional tools that you didn't mention, like I didn't mention Zero, for example, primary tool for us. So maybe in this prompt you just put at the end of this first line and add Zero if there's something you missed from your first prompt. So this is in your handout, but you got to scroll down a little bit underneath the extra credit areas. So it's at the bottom of the first page. Make sure you get all the way down to the top of the second page to capture the example format. Okay, so I've pasted that in, and I'm going to, where did it go? There it is. Sorry, I lost track of it. It's hard. This screen here, for some reason, the contrast is a little off, and I can't always tell where cursors are and where menu scroll bars are and where one thing starts and one thing ends. There, that's the start of it there. Okay. So I'll just ask it to include 0. Oh, something's changed here. Zapier Google Workspace. This is new. I saw it pop up something and I cleared it. It took me into a different mode. Okay, I'm back to where I expect to be. This looks much more what I was expecting. Include 0. I've noticed in the last few days, ChatGPT has made some updates. And they now have, if you remember from our white belt session, we talked about voice prompting. And I said that you couldn't do it on the desktop, you could do it on the Android app. I don't think the Apple app had that yet. I think the Apple app has since come out with it. And 2 days ago, it appeared on the desktop app. You can now click a button and just talk to ChatGPT from your computer.
Wow.
Crazy. Okay, so this is the output it's given me, and it looks like it's dumping. This is brand new. This wasn't doing this yesterday. It's putting me into this Zapier Google Workspace. So it's creating a separate little side screen for the output and moving my chat to the left-hand side. So if I clear that back, I can now go back to, oh, and it's even, oh boy, okay. It's putting it inside a little pane. This is actually not that helpful. And now it's giving me, it's actually recommending a next step for me. That can complicate a few things. Okay. Man, that wasn't doing it yesterday. It's incredible. Okay, so here we've got these 10 ideas. It's giving me, remember we asked it, we gave it a format. The format was what to automate and why it helps. So it's giving me each item. It's got what to automate and why it helps. And the thing that's missing from here is include every button I should press inside each platform as I complete the work. That was in my prompt. I think actually that prompt belongs in the next one anyway. So I didn't need that. It didn't seem to put it in place, which is there. Okay, so again, this idea is just about coming up with ideas. And so you can look through this and say, right, yep, I'd like to explore this one in more detail. Okay, so let's go and have a look at our next screen. And now here we have the prompt to create the work instructions. So I want you to have a look at that list of 10 items, choose one. And we're going to, let's say, proposal status updates. I'm going to paste that into my prompt down here. And include every button I should press. And we'll submit that. Not quite sure I like this new workspace idea, but we'll see how that goes. I've added a comment suggesting the detailed instructions for the proposal status update section. Would you like me to provide work instructions here or update it directly? Oh, okay. So that's added this little call out window here. Consider expanding this section. Do you like me to provide the work instruction here or update it directly in the document? Update directly in documents. Let's see what it's going to do here. This is going to take some getting used to. Okay, so it's actually taking this section in situ, which is different from the way it used to do it. And it's what it would have done before is it just would have given me detailed work instructions. But now it's actually updating this document on the fly. That is actually quite interesting.
Wow, mine just did something kind of amazing.
Yeah.
So I have Active Campaign going into Google Sheets, which is kind of my lead
Yes.
CRM. And it said, I said, when a PDF or when a new lead subscribes to my PDF and signs up for more information, I typed in Google Sheets, and then later in the same prompt, what to automate, it says, update the lead status in Google Sheets. So I automatically corrected that later in the prompt, and I haven't even hit enter yet.
Yeah.
And then it says, and I forgot to put MailChimp in here.
Yes.
Trigger a series of nurturing emails in MailChimp, which I do have a subscription to MailChimp as well. So it added that on top of it.
Yeah. I'm noticing here that it's recommending tools that we don't use. So we didn't say Slack. Okay. So this whatever new model this is doing, it's taking a few more liberties.
Yeah.
So yeah, this might mean that we actually, when we do our prompt, we might have to say, and don't recommend any other tools I haven't mentioned.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
just to keep it limited to, you
Right.
just happen to have MailChimp. Maybe you paste the example earlier where in our initial example it did mention MailChimp. Okay, so maybe that's why it's picking up MailChimp for you, but certainly for me, I don't use Slack. So it's not, why it's bringing up Slack in my example, I don't know. Okay, but I'm noticing here in this workspace, you could actually highlight something, and you can actually ask ChatGPT about that item. And
No kidding. Wow.
let's just give it, let's just say, create a detailed action plan with step-by-step instructions. See what it does here. Oh my goodness, look at this. It's doing it in situ. Wow. So you could ask it to write you a 2,000 word document. You could read the document here in the workspace. You could highlight things you don't like and ask it to rewrite this section with updates.
Within the section. Oh, nice.
And it would do it in place. One of the problems with ChatGPT is that even inside the same session, if you say, okay, generate this for me, it'll generate it for you. And then you give it some new information and you ask it to regenerate, it's coming up with a totally new response. It knows the context of what it told you last time, but it's not just taking what it wrote last time and making a tweak to it. It's rewriting the document with this new information. And so sometimes you look at your first draft, you go, oh, I really like the way it said this paragraph was really good. But when you've revised it, that paragraph is totally different. So this model would actually alleviate a lot of that, because you could actually go through it and you could say, either, okay, we need to apply some expert knowledge here. Okay, so you're asking for a total rewrite, but you could also go through and just say, okay, I'll delete this section, and it'll probably, let's try this. Let's just highlight this, delete this item. Took it off. Didn't renumber everything else, but it took that totally off. Wow. Okay. Well, this is going to take some getting used to. As I said, this was not doing this yesterday that I noticed. Okay. So this is brand new. Day before yesterday, I noticed the new voice prompts. So wow, this is very interesting. Okay. So we're learning as we go. Things change on a daily basis around here. Okay, so that was the end of the prompts that we want to look at today. I want to go through and give you just a quick overview. I know you're going to read the material that ChatGPT is going to give you as far as its teaching and its course type work is concerned. I do want you to go and read that. What I want to also do, partly also just for the sake of this is recorded on video, I want to give you a really quick walkthrough of automation tools and of Zapier in particular, and how we can use this to really accelerate our AI and efficiency adoption. Okay, so the first thing I want to look at here are what are the different tools that you have available to you for automation. There's actually dozens of them. So these are probably the top 7 tools. Zapier is by far the most well-known, with the most integrations. It's great for small businesses. You don't need to know anything about coding. You can get a little complicated when you get into some of the options and the settings, but for most things you can get by just by Googling something or watching a YouTube video, or asking a question in AI to explain how you use this particular product in Zapier, and it'll answer most of your questions. There's probably the second best, in my opinion, is Make. Make is a little bit more technically complicated. It has a lot more advanced workflow than Zapier does. It's a little bit like a combination of Zapier and an email marketing system like Keep, where you can string together a whole list and branch things off and do things differently, and that kind of stuff. So Make has a little bit more workflow logic, a little better than Zapier. It has slightly fewer integrations as well, but it's also affordable. And as long as you've got a little bit of a logical mind, you'll probably be able to understand Make as well. Zapier is just a little bit easier. Third one is IFTTT, which stands for If This Then That. And in fact, this is one of the oldest automation tools that's around. And so it's got a lot more of a simple approach, simple app connectors, not very complicated, which does make it, less attractive to organizations with larger multi-step issues. I'm not going to go through the other ones. N8N, I'd never heard of that one before. Workato, UiPath is very robust but more expensive, so might not be suitable for most small businesses unless you're really going to get into providing, this as a service, or you just got so many things you want to do, and you find that Zapier and Make just not quite up to the level you want. And Automate.io is also a good one, but it's a little bit more limited in what it can do. So those are the tools that you have available. I asked AI to generate all of this for me. It wrote me a report. So I'm actually giving you a summary of what ChatGPT did. I asked it to give some of the core functionalities that each of these tools give, and then rate how well out of 10 the tool delivers on these functionalities. So here you can see the one that actually has the highest score is Workato, and then UiPath. Now, we didn't talk about those because they are a lot more complex. So again, if you have higher needs and you've got a higher budget, these products might actually be a better fit for you than Zapier or Make. Automate.io and IFTTT, have much less functionality, and they score, at the bottom of the range. But any of these products here are all, reasonably good, and for the price, maybe except UiPath, any of these would be good solutions as long as you've got the necessary technical expertise. So that's why these two probably don't get used as much, because you need a little bit more technical expertise than you do with Zapier or Make. And then just pricing, a couple of things I want to point out to you. Each of these products have different pricing tiers, and I just want to help you understand, if you're looking at these products, what you need to know about your subscription price. Most of them have a free tier. Their free tiers are often intentionally very limited. So for example, Zapier, free tier, 5 little applications or zaps, so 5 recipes, if you will, 5 different automations can be loaded in your account at any one time. And you can have up to 100 transactions or tasks per month. Zapier have different tiers of integrations. So they have free tier, sort of low premium and high premium integrations. And so on the free account, you only get the free integrations. Unfortunately, Xero and QBO are not in the free tier. So if you want to be using integrations that work with Xero and QBO, you will need to have one of the next 2 subscriptions. I'm on the starter pack. That gives us up to 20 zaps or recipes or sets of instructions that are active at any one time, 750 tasks per month. We've never exceeded that. And that gives me access to all the apps that I currently use. Each one is limited to 1 user. Make, which is a good competitor to Zapier, a little more complex, a little bit less integrations. They also have a free account. You can have unlimited scenarios like a zap, a recipe, and you limit it to 1,000 transactions a month, and you can access all their integrations. So from a cost efficiency perspective, this one here is actually better than the starter edition on Zapier. So it actually makes it a great place to start if you're a little bit more technologically literate and you can understand logic flows a little better. Okay, or you have maybe slightly more complex needs than Zapier. They then go up $9 a month. These are all US dollar pricing. $9 a month gives you 10,000 operations. Okay, so very low cost. You get in there, you start, you can have, 50 different things you're playing around with. And once your transaction volume goes up, well, now you commit to the higher volume. And even to get to double that, you're still only at $16 a month. And at $16 a month, you actually get additional users able to access the account. I don't remember whether this is $16 per user or $16 for the account with up to 3 users. But this might well be something that, as an accounting firm, we might want to subscribe to and build all of our integrations for our clients into this product, because I can now give other people access without sharing passwords, and I get 20,000 operations a month rather than being limited to say 750, and I'm still paying less than I would pay for the Zapier for starter level. Okay, so I just wanted to give you an idea there of pricing on some of these services and how you need to understand the pricing matrix. And they all have similar pricing scenarios. I just haven't given you, I've just given you the two most popular ones. So how do these integration tools work? Now, this is what I'm expecting that you'll learn in the documents that you're going to run in the chat sessions and let ChatGPT teach you something. I want to give you just a very quick introduction to it. So on the right side, this is a Zap from Zapier. A Zap is made up of effectively two pieces. There is a trigger and an action. So every step in this process is connected to an app. So this one is Jotform. So my trigger here is from Jotform, a new form is submitted. Okay, that creates an event in Zapier, and it now goes, yep, I've got a new form submitted. Now I go through the rest of this Zap, this recipe, this list of instructions, and I follow the following sequence. So we have two actions in this one. So first of all, we use Zapier's got an outbound email tool. So we send an email to ourselves so that we know that someone has submitted this document. So we're alerted to the fact that that's now been received. And then our second action is going to Google Sheets, and it creates a row and it pastes the data from the Jotform into that row. Okay, so just a nice simple and again, there's many integrations here. So if you don't use Jotform, you use something else, it'll work perfectly. Okay, so you've got the app, some sort of form tool, a new submission is made. We want to send whether that be a confirmation email back to the user or to yourself so that you know that something's been received, and add that to your row in Google Sheets. Okay, we use variations on this for when a new client fills in a new client survey, a pre-meeting checklist. Okay, so we gather all that information. So what I want to do, actually, before I go on to that, any questions on how these automation tools work? You can string together multiple actions, and you can even have some logic. So that when you click on this plus button here, there's actually an option to have an if, a path A, path B kind of approach as well. You can put delay timers in here as well. So wait 7 days before taking the next step. All of these kinds of things are possible. If you've ever done work in Keep or ActiveCampaign, where you've built automations, or Keep calls them a campaign inside those programs, it works very similar to the way that works. May be a little more restrictive, but the key thing here is that you can actually integrate data from multiple sources. Okay, so you're not limited. If you're an ActiveCampaign or Keep, you're limited to the data that was submitted on that form and available to you in that tool. Those tools may let you send data to other tools, but you can't get other data. The great thing here is that this Jotform could submit a form. Your next step could be to look up that email address in your CRM system and identify the name of the client that this form is from and who the bookkeeper is or the accountant is assigned to that client. Then you could have a logical branch that says, if we can't find that user, just send this copy to our admin assistant and they'll reroute it. If we have the name of a bookkeeper, if we can find it and we know who the bookkeeper is assigned to this client, we'll send it to them. Okay, so you can actually integrate data from different systems using some simple logic to take different actions based on those results. So it can get very, very powerful. Questions on how these automation tools would work for you? Can you think of some examples of how you might use this that you might not already be using?
I'm working in ActiveCampaign, and it automatically goes into a whole like drip campaign.
Yes. So here's the thing. if you've got a tool that already has its own automation, try and work within that tool. You'll actually get much better results. However, most tools, when they build their own automation, they build them inside a fixed sandbox. And so sometimes what you have to do is you have to pair that with something like a Zapier. So if you've got, say, a lead magnet on your website, you're gonna that form submission is going to go into ActiveCampaign. It's going to create the contact. It's going to send the welcome email, and then every 7 days, it's going to send a nurture campaign. Okay. Now you might also want that recorded in a Google Sheet. You may want something to be added to your calendar in 30 days for you to phone that user. Okay, so ActiveCampaign might not do those extra steps for you because they're working in a sandbox. Some of them do, some of them don't. So that's where you can combine the automation in some of those tools, which is really good. And I wouldn't suggest you ditch the automation in those tools to use Zapier. Okay, but you might want to pair that or parallel that with something happening in Zapier independently. Okay, so there's different ways that you can manage and use, you know, a tool like Zapier or Make that supplements what you might be doing in a CRM type system or a CRM automation engine. Again, that automation engine isn't going to work for everything you want. Let's say, you know, you've got an example where when a payment is applied to an invoice in QuickBooks on your account, you want that to show up in Slack. Okay, very simple trigger, very simple action. You could have Zapier take care of that for you. Now, ActiveCampaign is never going to touch that. Okay, but Zapier can handle that very, very easily. Now, assuming there are no more questions, I want to go on to a slightly more advanced example, and I'm going to work it for you as well. Any more questions? Okay, so we've talked a lot about AI, and you remember back in our yellow belt, we introduced you to the AI transformation process, that swim lane diagram, where we looked at what can we delegate and what can we automate. So far, all we've looked at is be able to create long form GPTs. We've just introduced the idea of integration between multiple systems. Well, what if we could integrate ChatGPT with data from other systems? Well, you can, and Zapier does it really well. So here's an example of a Zap that I created this week, just as a sample. It's a 4-step sample. It's using 4 different tools. So first of all, it's triggered by a new file arriving in a designated folder in Dropbox. I want to get that file analyzed and sent to the bookkeeper, ready to code into the accounting system. Now, one of the limits of ChatGPT is it can't analyze PDF files through the API. It has to be converted to a JPEG. So I had to put an extra step in here to convert the PDF to a JPEG. Okay, so here's the full action. A file is received in Dropbox, activates the trigger. We convert that PDF file, and I haven't bothered putting in any logic yet, converts that PDF file to a JPEG, submits that JPEG with a very simple ChatGPT script, asking it to analyze the file. It returns its answer, and now I email the analysis response, a link to the Dropbox file, and I even attach the original image, the original submitted file. I email that to myself. Now, as an accountant or a bookkeeper, that's actually pretty good. Okay, now I could even take this to the next level if I really wanted to, of actually sending that straight into my accounting system if I wanted to. It gets a little more complicated. I thought it was too complex for this example. What I'm really trying to model for you here is this step. How do we integrate ChatGPT into a series of steps that rely on data from other systems? Haven't been able to see that yet. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to do this exact example for you and show you how you create it. Any questions on the process yet?
Why can't you take that email and have it analyze what bookkeeper it's supposed to go to, and the email goes directly to that bookkeeper?
I certainly could have done that. I just wanted to keep this example nice and simple.
Okay.
Okay, if I had, I would need to integrate in with say a Google Sheet that listed all my client names and the bookkeepers, and I would have to look that up. So I could have done that. I just wanted this example to be very simple.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm going to create a new Zap. Pull up test 3. I'm going to skip the Copilot. I'm going to go straight to manually defining everything here. So I'm going to set my trigger, Dropbox. Over on the right-hand side, we get to give all the settings. This is where it gets a little complicated. People give up if they don't understand how to use the settings. But we want to use the trigger event of a new file and folder. I'm already connected to my Dropbox account. I've already made sure all these things are working. Default space. I'm going to put my folder, Zapier test. I'm going to leave all the other items as defaults. And it's going to, now the last step, whenever we configure any option, is to test it. It's now going to actually go back and look at that Dropbox folder and see if there are, in fact, any new files in this folder. It's taking longer than it normally does. Yep, I found it. Okay, so there's a file here. We can look at the properties of this file. It's an invoice, and that's all it knows about it. Okay, it's an invoice. So that's great. We're going to use that file as our test. So now we're going to go on to our second step, and we're going to go pdf.co. I'm already connected to this. My event that we're going to do is we're going to convert to PDF to anything. So PDF to anything converter. Our output format is going to be a JPEG. The source file URL is going to be the file from Dropbox. So here we have the direct media link. We'll use that one there, I think. Don't need anything else from this, so we'll leave all those defaults the same. Finish required fields. Where are my required fields? There it goes. I had to click out of the box. Okay. And I don't need anything else, so I'm going to test. Okay, so it happened. It's giving me back a file. You can't see the file, but the file is here. So I'm going to now add another step. And this is where we're going to send it to ChatGPT. And just for the sake of speed, I'm just going to go and steal the text from what I did yesterday. Okay, so I've got my ChatGPT action. My event, there's a number of things we can do with ChatGPT, including translating or creating transcriptions. If you have a audio file, you can actually send it using this tool called Whisper to ChatGPT, and it'll actually transcribe the conversation. There's also translation. So, maybe it comes back and it says my detected language was French, and you can go, ooh la la, no français, please convert to English. And if it's not base language, not English, you could have it create a translation as another step. So lots of options there. We're going to use the conversation action, which is basically a standard prompt. But continue. Now we're going to fill in some of these fields, and this is where things get a little tricky. Most of these we don't need. So I'm going to paste in my prompt. I'll just read it for you. Review the attached file and create a summary of what the file is, including key summary data. If it is an invoice or receipt, include the vendor name, customer name, invoice date, due date, total amount, tax amount, and a summary of what was purchased. Okay, I can choose the model that I want to use. I'm just going to use the standard 4.0 current model. For a memory key, if you actually want it to preserve all your history, you could put something in here, maybe it'd be the file name, or you could have it assign some sort of key so that next time you run this chat, it'll pick up the same history if you needed it. We don't need it in this case. We do want to attach an image, and we're going to go and pull our image out of the pdf.co, and we're going to use the URL, I believe is the right one. Next fields, we don't need to change. This is what does it call the user? What does it call the GPT? Here we could actually put additional background information. So, think of this as providing additional context. And I'm not going to worry about the tokens and temperature. This is how you sort of refine how long it's allowed to do things for and how, how creative is it. 2.0 is creative. 0 is I'm a robot. So we always use it, just leave the defaults. So we'll click continue. And now we're ready to test this. Okay, so it's going to take all the information and it's failed to work. You uploaded an unsupported image. Okay, so let me go back and configure. Maybe I chose the wrong image. Maybe it was that one. We'll test with that. Okay, it worked. So it sent ChatGPT, and here we can actually see this was what I sent it, and this is what it came back with. So it's using some markdown language. We might want to ask it to not do that. But just for the sake of our example, you can see here that it worked. It generated a response from ChatGPT. And my last step is I want to send an email. Now, I could integrate this with my own Google and have it sent through my own email. That would be a little more secure. In this case, Zapier just has its own simple outbound email service that it allows us to use. And I'm going to send it to me. And in the body, we are going to add in the response from ChatGPT. We're going to include a link to the image from Dropbox, and we're going to include an attachment using the actual file object, not the link. Okay, it's going to come from my Zapier servant, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, so we're going to test that. And that worked. If I pull up my email, here we have a message from my Zapier servant. Your Highness, here is a new file.
Yes.
Here's the ChatGPT response. Here is I didn't give any description in front of it. Here's the link that I could just click in here to pull up that document from Dropbox. Okay, there's a legal services bill. And I asked it to attach the image. So here is that same image actually attached inside the email. Now, that would be overkill for this type of example. We wouldn't necessarily want the image because we would go to the next step of having this added into an accounting system or something like that. Okay, but that just shows you the example of how we might be able to use this as a way to run a GPT script. And then what you could do in your next steps is we could reformat this with a standard format, maybe even sort of like an XML style format. And then we could pass that format and use that to populate an invoice posting template to send it into the accounting system. Okay, so maybe as a draft. We use Receipt Bank, Dext, in our firm for most of our client work. But our new contract, we have a limited number of accounts, and we're right up at that limit. So we had to sort of make some decisions on what are we going to do? Are we going to pay for the next layer up, or are we going to not use Dext on some of our small clients, or maybe even internal clients like my own business? So a couple of my companies are too small. We just said, you know what, we're not going to bother paying for Dex. We'll keep that subscription for clients. So now I'm looking, and what we did is we created a folder on Google Drive where any new invoice that comes in, I just drop it in that folder, and my bookkeeper goes and pulls it out and manually enters it into Xero, which is my accounting system. So of course I'm looking at this going, well, now I don't even have to have him do that next step. We could actually have it, attempted to be coded, post it maybe as a draft bill into Xero, and all they have to do is go and review it in Xero and approve it. And we could even send him an email to say it's been added, so he knows there's stuff to go and look at. Okay, so again, using Zapier and ChatGPT together gives us the ability to create, this is a simple step. We could have made this 5 times more complex and got a lot more value out of it, but that would have taken me an hour to demonstrate. So I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to show you how we can integrate ChatGPT into our process. What do you think about that, Chris?
It's a lot. I just feel like my work just is gonna double.
Well, I know someone that can help you simplify things.
Yeah, I know. It's because I know we're going into automation soon because I know Angie's gonna be let's automate everything, and that's one thing that we've been trying to look for
Yes.
with ClickUp and stuff like that. So because we do a lot of emails and a lot of client back and forth stuff, and I've already created some chat GPTs that deal with the emails, which is nice.
Yep.
Um, and kind of a database for some of the main clients, but yeah, this is gonna be another thing.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I have not got into in this session is low code systems. Now, Zapier is a no code system. Okay, you can create almost a program software to do a certain task. And the great thing about Zapier is these triggers. You don't have to sit there and tell it to go. It just does it when the trigger happens. But sometimes you can't get a trigger. Sometimes you actually have to tell it to start. You can do that in Zapier as well. But you might have things where you actually want to create a standalone application, maybe with a bit of a user interface that a user interacts with. Okay, well, there are really good no-code or low-code tools that will integrate AI into the process, that are fairly affordable. Now, they're still fairly low level yet, but there are some pretty good ones out there, and eventually I want to put a little brief introduction to that in this belt as well, because again, this takes us to the next level. I've just upped the game significantly by introducing you to ChatGPT. I then upped it again. Sorry, not ChatGPT. We then upped it again by saying, hey, here's some tools you can automate standard tasks with. We upped it again by saying, and by the way, you can build ChatGPT into that automation process. Well, once we start getting to standalone applications using no-code tools that can integrate AI, we're going to up the game again. Okay, so this is how we get back to that roadmap of being able to automate tasks, delegate and automate deliverables inside your role. This is how we really start to make these things viable. If the user has to initiate everything, and if the user has to load in an email or load in a document every time they want to do something, you're still dependent on a person. But if we can trigger things, and some things can be triggered by calendar, but if we can automatically trigger things when they need to happen and not wait for a human to start them, we can accelerate our processing of those items, and still have the power of ChatGPT. The problem with Zapier by itself is that it doesn't think. It'll do stuff, but it doesn't think. Well, now we've been able to introduce with ChatGPT a thinking engine that will actually help us analyze, break down, make some decisions on where things need to be coded. Okay, so starting to get really powerful in how things work. And imagine if you had, a database of your clients. Maybe you saved their chart of accounts in that database, and as part of your GPT script, it was actually trying to work out the best account to code something to. Maybe you even gave it some defaults and some suggestions as part of your background, and now you're able to recreate something like Dext for nothing but a few hours of your time. Okay, so again, lots of power here. It's never going to be as good as something like Dext on scale, but it certainly gives you some options. In order to integrate ChatGPT, you do need an OpenAI developer's account, which is separate from your regular ChatGPT account. And you do have to pay for every transaction that goes through it. We're talking fractions of a cent for most things. So it's, feel free to go and load $10 on it, and you might not even use that $10 in the first month or two at the level we're working at. Once you start building the tools that are actively running all the time, and with multiple triggers a day, well, yeah, you might start churning through a little bit of that budget. But at the level we're starting with, yeah, go to town, play around. If you waste $100, on this, it's money well spent. Okay, so black belt recap. We've covered a lot of ground. You've still got some homework to do. We've talked about the automation engines and Zapier in particular. I've walked you through how these automation engines work with their triggers and their actions. We've looked at how we build a simple Zap or recipe or script, whatever you want to call it, into Zapier. And we've looked at how to integrate AI into that process. That is the game changer in this piece. Okay, automation's been around for a long time. Being able to build ChatGPT into this is where things really get exciting. So your proof step, your homework. In order to get your certification, you need to submit a recording. We want you to basically walk through the results of the scripts that you will run, give a little bit of brief commentary on them. We want you to choose a work instruction, ideally from your role plan, and go through that process of creating your academy, teaching you how to implement that. Bonus money for those who actually go and implement that and can show it in their video. Okay, it's not bonus money, but kudos to you if you can actually then go and do it using the skills we've just taught you. And I would highly encourage you to practice that. If you've never used Zapier before, I would go and get the free account, maybe even get the paid account to get access to QuickBooks. Although I would stay away from integrating with accounting systems on the first beat, just because you don't want to mess around with your live accounting system. Start with other stuff, integrating other apps first, see how that goes. Then you can get a little more complex once you've had a bit of experience. But it's really cool to play with. There are some frustrations. Not every trigger is what you need. Not every action is what you need. You do have to try and find the right balance. And that's it. So, yep, your homework was to go through that process, create the automation, there are submission instructions. And next week is our final discussion. I want you to think, so part of your homework here is I want you to consider the following questions. We are going to talk about this next week. Next week is more of a discussion than a presentation. I want you to really navel gaze here and look back at what we've done in the last 9 weeks. I want you to be thinking about what are you going to do next in the next 30 days? What are the top priorities that you actually want to say, I want to do this? Okay, be as specific as you can. I really want you to come back next week with answers. Those that are watching the video, please do your best to show up and come with your thoughts and plans. This course will be a total waste of money if you just close the drawer and walk away from it and hope that one day you will get to this. Not going to work. You've got to have some active plans to keep working on this. So what's in the next month between now and early next year? What is it you actually want to try and do? These don't have to be big things. These could just be, hey, I've got a couple of deliverables. I'd like to actually see if I can complete the role plan process for that deliverable. Okay, that'll be great. Where do you see AI being able to be used in your business? This is slightly more strategic. In the next year, what sort of things do you think AI could do for you in your business? And what is the biggest bottleneck or constraint in your business that you think AI could really help you with? Okay, what is the one thing that you are constantly stumbling over that you think AI might help you with? And your final question is, what support do you need from me and our team on that journey? We are willing to support, coach, and even help with implementation on some of these things. We've got people on our team that love working on the automation side. You've got someone like me that's able to coach and support people through that role plan process. Maybe it's other people on your team need to go through this training course. So we want to understand, what do you need from us to be able to take your next steps? So that's what next week is going to be about. Please do your best to be on that call, because it won't be the same if you're watching a recording. In fact, that recording will not be shared. I'll take it for my purposes, but we won't be sharing that on the site. So if you don't make that session, that's too bad. Okay, so thank you so much. Any questions or final reflections before we sign off? Okay, well, I've probably blown your mind, so that's all good. That's my job. Giving Chris more work to do. He's like, oh, Peter, I regret this course now. Giving me so much to do, but it's exciting, isn't it, Chris?
Upfront stuff though, and then it, hopefully clears the path down the road.
Right. This is one of the things that I'm finding, the deeper in I go, the more time I spend in AI, the more time I save on something later on.
Yeah.
I said this right at the beginning. It's at the point now where it takes less time to tell AI what you need and go through its process than it does to actually do it manually. So writing things, newsletters, content creation. It's now much faster to have AI do it for you and you just review and correct it. Especially, I think, with this new workspace that just released today, that I think that's a bit of a game changer actually for content creation. So now you're able to iterate much better in some of these spaces. And of course, if you're building repeatable processes, it's so much better. If you've got something you have to do twice a year, go and build the damn AI. Because for an hour of investment, it's probably going to save you 5 hours of implementation twice. So it really becomes useful to think like this and to think about AI tools, integrations, just anything, even saving 5 minutes on something. If that something happens multiple times in a week, it's worth spending an hour to work out, how can I implement this? How can I put a Zapier in place? How could I build a tool that'll make this job easier? My goal is to actually build a tool a week right now. Haven't built one this week, but I built one last week. Okay, so my goal is to try and build one tool a week to see how do we implement this in our firm on a more active basis. And I've got our team looking for this stuff as well. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next week. Talk about what's coming next for you in development of AI, 30 days, the next year. What is your constraint and how can I help? Okay, well, thanks everyone. Those watching the video, thanks so much. Hopefully we'll be in person in class next week because you won't get the recording. Okay, well, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Peter.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.